He was driving through the fog-shrouded roads of Norfolk, face a mask of chiseled stone. Every mile he covered, every silent turn of the wheel, pulled him further from the life he knew. He'd walked with heads of state, commanded a 30-room Windsor mansion with staff waiting on his every whim. Now, alone in the gloom, a man who once believed the word consequence held no personal meaning was facing a stark, brutal reckoning. But here's the absolute gut punch of it all. While he was driving, forcing that stony resolve, miles away at the palace he'd been forced to abandon, his entire past was quite literally going up in flames. Palace staff were tossing his possessions into massive yellow dumpsters, and on those same sacred grounds, a bonfire burned, devouring decades of a life that he thought was untouchable. And that, believe it or not, was not even the worst of it. This goes way deeper than anyone realizes. To grasp the sheer scale of this downfall, you have to understand where he started. Royal Lodge, 30 rooms nestled in Windsor Great Park, one of the most prestigious addresses in the UK. This wasn't earned through merit or paid for by his own hand. It was a birthright, a gift from an institution, and a mother who believed he was utterly untouchable. Staff waited around the clock, armed security was constant, and taxpayer money flowed, fueling a lifestyle where his every desire was met without question. He was, by all accounts, the Queen's cherished favorite son. That maternal devotion became a shield. It insulated him, despite a consistent pattern of behavior that, by the testimony of those who worked with him for decades, never justified such protection. Untouchable is the word that echoes in every account of his mindset. Not arrogant in a way that suggests self-awareness, but genuinely convinced, deep down, that the rules governing ordinary lives simply did not apply to him. Consequences? Those were for other people. His existence was fundamentally different. Then the cracks appeared. The Epstein Association went public. The Newsnight interview became a global masterclass in catastrophic self-destruction. His duties were stripped, titles removed, and his public standing utterly collapsed. The institution began to formally distance itself, a move unprecedented for a member of his generation. Yet, through it all, he clung to Royal Lodge. That 30-room mansion remained the last visible physical declaration that, no matter the public disgrace, he still lived like a prince. Until King Charles decided, one night, that it was over. The eviction was not a quiet, dignified departure. It was executed in darkness, under the cover of night, without ceremony or any attempt at a managed public narrative. This was a hostile removal. A 132-mile forced relocation from Windsor to Sandringham, driven in the kind of darkness that perfectly suited the nature of what was happening. This wasn't a choice, it was a definitive institutional removal on the Crown's terms. The public reaction was one of shock, but that gasp was only for the surface of what had occurred. What they didn't know was happening simultaneously. Miles away at Royal Lodge was far more shocking. Aerial photographs eventually confirmed the grim reality. Massive yellow dumpsters overflowing with his possessions at the front and rear of Royal Lodge. But it went beyond disposal. His former valet, under direct orders, dragged unwanted furniture and personal items onto the palace grounds, doused them, and set them ablaze. A bonfire of his former life, burning on the very soil that had been his home for decades. This wasn't just about clearing space. It was a brutal, fiery declaration. A statement made in smoke and ash that the old regime was unequivocally finished, leaving no room for any possibility of return. Then, just 3 weeks after that humiliating eviction, on the morning of his 66th birthday, the unthinkable happened. He was arrested. 11 hours in police custody, under suspicion of misconduct in public office. The specific allegation? Sharing confidential trade information with Jeffrey Epstein during his tenure as the UK's special trade envoy. We're talking high-level trade missions, official itineraries, sensitive reports, information that in Epstein's hands raises questions far beyond mere reputational damage. Thames Valley Police have confirmed the investigation is active and ongoing, following its own timeline, indifferent to palace concerns. Now here's the part that should make you angry. Think about that timing for a moment. His 66th birthday, a day for personal recognition, instead spent 11 hours in a police interview room. Before this arrest, everything he'd faced was reputational, institutional, familial, certainly damaging, undeniably humiliating, but still within a realm where palace managers and strategic silence could control the narrative. A criminal investigation, however, operates in an entirely different universe. It's governed by evidence, law, and judicial process. systems utterly indifferent to the concerns of ancient, powerful institutions. For the first time in his life, Andrew is caught in a system he cannot charm, outrank, or simply outlast with the patience that privilege usually enables. The clock in this investigation ticks to its own relentless rhythm, and there's no telling where it will stop. But these headline events, the eviction, the bonfire, the arrest, they aren't isolated shocks. They're the inevitable culmination of decades of accumulated testimony from the very people who worked with Andrew. Accounts from different roles, across different periods, have painted a shockingly consistent portrait. Soiled tissues left for days, beds deliberately unmade, explosive tantrums directed at staff who dared to question his demands. Paul Burrell, Robert Jobson, Dickie Arbiter, their consistent observations reveal a man whose entire orientation to the world was built on the unshakable assumption that others existed solely to meet his needs. Any failure to do so was legitimate grounds for explosive anger. This isn't occasional bad behavior. It's deeply ingrained character, and now that character exists not within the protective walls of Royal Lodge, but within a 5-bedroom farmhouse where staff are minimal, and institutional tolerance for entitlement is demonstrably running out. And this is where it gets personal. Let's be brutally specific about his new reality. Marsh Farm on the Sandringham estate is a shoebox compared to Royal Lodge's 30 rooms. This isn't just a downgrade, it's a physical manifestation of his complete fall from grace. Insiders describe persistent molehills destroying the lawn, pest control issues, and seasonal flood warnings that threaten the very ground he stands on. His rooms are cluttered with branded moving boxes emblazoned with HRH designations, labels that now feel tragically out of place. The surrounding landscape is unapologetically agricultural, 500 cattle, an industrial organic farming operation. It does not modify itself for royal preferences. The security is there to manage institutional risk his presence creates, not to project his importance. There's no personal valet, no allowance, no round-the-clock armed guard. The entire infrastructure of importance has been systematically dismantled, leaving only basic, managed, supervised accommodation on an estate owned by someone else. This is what consequence looks like when it finally arrives for someone who believed it never would. And speaking of parallel downfalls, you cannot fully understand Andrew's collapse without looking at the woman who shared his address for 3 decades, Sarah Ferguson. Newly unsealed federal documents from Epstein-related legal proceedings reveal a devastating personal story. Emails show her calling Epstein a legend, the brother she always wished for, even typing "just marry me" in one exchange, while attempting to secure her own financial future through a relationship that persisted long after his crimes were public knowledge. Her financial situation, documented across 6 liquidated companies and severed charity ties, is in freefall. The safety net of rent-free Royal Lodge and proximity to Andrew's privilege, both are gone, leaving her precarious reality brutally exposed. Because here's what this all means going forward. King Charles has drawn an unmistakable line. The instruction that Royal Lodge be emptied of absolutely everything wasn't a logistical preference. It was a statement. The bonfire, a declaration. The Sandringham arrangement, no photographed meetings, no return to relevance, is the architecture of a permanent, managed distance. Charles is executing the monarchy's ancient playbook. Prioritize institutional survival over individual comfort. Bloodline is secondary to reputation. He's made the cold calculation that some associations are more damaging to maintain than to sever. Andrew is housed, minimally funded, not completely abandoned. But the message sent by the eviction, the bonfire, the arrest, and the managed isolation is definitive. The era of unchecked entitlement within the royal orbit is finished. Any other member of the institution observing Andrew's fate and drawing conclusions about the current tolerance for reputation-damaging behavior is reading the situation correctly. This is a warning, made visible not in words, but in yellow dumpsters, bonfires, and a stone face behind the wheel. So pull back from all the specific details and confront the larger question. What happens to a man who has never encountered meaningful consequence, when consequence finally arrives at scale? The internal understanding of his position, built by decades of Royal Lodge, institutional protection, and the Queen's maternal devotion, appears to have never adjusted to the external reality. That dangerous gap between who he believes himself to be and what his world actually is where the most significant danger lives. It's not just the serious criminal investigation or the jarring reduced circumstances. It's the terrifying possibility that a man who was never required to adapt may now be genuinely incapable of it. The fog on those Sandringham roads eventually clears. The Range Rover disappears. But the question remains, for a man discovering with painful clarity that the world he grew up in no longer exists. The bonfire has burned, the dumpsters are gone, Royal Lodge sits empty, a ghost of a life vanished, and what replaced it? A boggy Norfolk farmhouse, molehills, flood warnings, the smell of manure, and HRH boxes scattered among moving chaos. No valet, no allowance, no security projecting importance. Just a managed, supervised, contained existence at the periphery, overshadowed by an active criminal investigation indifferent to every form of privilege the Windsor name once provided. The stone face on those Sandringham roads does not look like a man who has accepted what has happened. It looks like a man still trying to understand how it happened at all, still searching for the moment when the rules that apply to everyone else finally began to apply to him. That moment was September 8, 2022, the day the Queen died, and the protection that had always stood between Andrew and the full weight of consequence died with her. This is consequence, arriving accumulated, compounded, and relentless. Worse than before, and not finished yet.